Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin-Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin-Raymond, and I'm a minister, spiritual life coach, holistic nutritionist, author, and founder of Redefinding You, LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And welcome to this edition of the show. You are in season 6, and we are strong into the first quarter of 2026. And we've been talking about the year of execution. 2026 is the year of execution. 2025 was all about filling our toolboxes. We did a 365-day challenge where we made overall wellness a habit, and we sought ways in which to do that. And so this year, it's all about execution. It's all about making sure that we're taking those healthy habits that we've created and we're using them in a way that is going to benefit us, that is going to manifest all of the things that we've learned in 2025. So, if you are new to the How Now podcast, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here. You are now officially part of the How Now family. So please be sure to go to my website, and that is right here www.hownowpodcast.com. Click on your favorite podcast platform and be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe. You can also scroll to the bottom of the page and click on the banner for this week's show, and it will take you to the How Now YouTube channel, where you can check out my playlists like Tuesday, where I give a scripture verse every Tuesday and challenge you to take that deeper dive. Or you can check out Spirit Body Transformation, where I talk about my wellness journey. Or you can check out some of the shows that you may have missed, or even 365-day challenge. All things How Now. All things that are happening in my now, you can find on the How Now YouTube channel. You can also find it scrolling across the bottom of the screen during this show. So again, that is www.hownowpodcast.com. Okay, so let's get into tonight's show. We're going to be doing a segment on spirit body transformation, because as some of you who are regular listeners know, that in this year of transformation, in this year of execution, we've done 4 segments. One segment features Jason Gerardo, and it's talking about living your purpose. And then we have a segment that's talking about that's talking about financial fitness, and that's with Leah Garcia. And she's talking about all things that help us to be financially fit. And then I have a third segment that is on the 12 spiritual principles, where we're talking about specific spiritual principle each month, and it features a spiritual luminary that it encompasses or embodies that spiritual principle. And then we have the spirit body transformation segment. And that's where we talk about things that are going to help us physically as we are going through our wellness journey. Because we know that there's no one tool that is specific or that heals all different aspects of our wellness, mind, body, and spirit. And so, again, we're going to be talking about spirit body transformation in this segment. And this segment is going to be featuring yours truly, okay? Because as a holistic nutritionist, we want to talk about things that we can do that are going to help us. And I'm also going to be sharing some of my experiences as I've gone through my own spiritual, mental, and physical journey. I've gone through a wellness journey that started back in 2020. And so I want to share that with you. There's a picture of before when I was back in 2020, and a picture of me in 2025. Okay. A lot happened during that time. I lost 64 pounds. I had to have surgery to remove the excess skin from my body. That was a total of 11 and a half pounds. They removed s- uh, some excess skin from my abdominal area. And I also had a reduction to reduce the skin. So there were a lot of changes that took place during my wellness journey. And so during the course of that journey, I learned a lot. There were some things that, you know, I didn't expect. There were some things that, uh, I wasn't quite sure of. But one thing that I realized is that, you know, you go through the process of changing your diet or changing your exercise or changing your eating habits, whatever it was that you did to start your wellness journey. There's still something in your mind that kind of says, "Oh, I'm not going to be successful." It's amazing how we self-sabotage. We think that, you know, I'm going to do this. You do all the things, but you still don't think that it's actually going to happen. And that's what happened to me. I was doing all the things. I had changed my eating habits. I had changed how I exercised and moved my body, and I began to lose the weight. And it wasn't until I hit the 50-pound mark that I was like, wait a minute. Now I've got all of these clothes that no longer fit. I didn't anticipate having to change my wardrobe. I didn't anticipate, you know, looking significantly different. I didn't expect the feelings that I was going to have when I lost the weight because, you've got to get used to this new body. You got to used to this new appearance. And that's something that, in your mind's eye, you see one thing. And then when you look in the mirror, you see something different. What I think I thought of initially was, wow, now I understand why when certain people would have things like gastric bypass or other types of surgery where they had psychologicals, because there was so much more to it than just losing the weight. It affected your mind and your mindset and how you saw things and how you perceive things. And so there was a lot that went into this wellness journey beyond just the physical. And so, I want to share that little background with you of my wellness journey. And you can always, again, go and tap into my playlist where I talk a little bit about that wellness journey and about the surgery that I had to have. There was a lot that took place during that season, and things are still taking place. 4 years later, almost 5 years later, there are still things that I'm learning. And I think that was the reason why I sought to be a holistic nutritionist, because I wanted to understand about eating and food and what happened when I ate food and what happened, to my body and to my systems. I just really wanted to kind of get a stronger grasp on what it meant to to be well and to eat well and to understand how the things that I put in my body process, how those things affect my well-being. And so that's something that I hope to continue to share as we do these spirit body transformation segments. Okay, but tonight what I want to talk about is taking wellness with you. As some of you know, I travel a lot for business and for pleasure. And so I wanted to share a few of the tips and some of the wellness that I take with me, especially as we're going into the summer months. We're going to be going into the summer. Some people are going to be ramping up to take their families on vacation, or they're going to be going on personal excursions, or going on a girl's trip or a guy's trip. All of these things that are going to be coming up as the summer begins to progress, and we want to make sure that people are ready to take wellness with them, because we tend to go kind of off course, especially when we're traveling. But like I said, not just for pleasure, but also for business. I do a lot of traveling. And that was something that was a challenge when I very first started my wellness journey. I started mine with Optavia because that was, they meals were portable. And so it was easier for me to start that because I was able to take those things with me, and I just, ate the supplements and did those things. And then I eventually transitioned out of that because, as you're going through your wellness journey, you're going to find that different things work for different people. I didn't want to continue to eat food that was packaged. I wanted to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and have those alternatives. And so I began to shift from from the packaged and processed type foods into more whole foods and real foods. And so that was, the dynamic of how my wellness journey changed. And so that's something that's important. You have to be able to individualize it for yourself. I do that as a wellness coach. You know, I'm not going to give the same exercise program, or I'm not going to give the same, recommendations or suggestions for eating habits that I may give to a person. I've got to know that person. I've got to know their background. I've got to know a little bit about their history. A person who has a history of knee or hip issues, I'm not going to have them doing jumping jacks and squats and things that are going to cause inflammation or cause any type of harm, from a pre-existing condition. So there are things that we have to take into consideration with all of the things that we do, so that way we're personalizing it for us and making it work for us. Okay. Just like I showed that before and after picture, the one thing that's so important about that is that this is my personal best. I had not been under 200 pounds since I was 17. And I'm in a size 14 now, and that is the smallest that I have been in my adult life. I had not been a size 14 since I was in the eighth grade. And here it is, I'm coming up on next month, coming up on 56 years old. So that was a long time to to be that size, and I learned to be comfortable with that size that I was, because I had learned to embrace being full figured. And so, I had to change my mindset. And so that's something that's important as you're going through your wellness journey, that you're not making comparisons to someone else. What you're doing is you're being a better version of yourself. And I choose to be a better version of myself, mind, body, and spirit. So I'm working on spiritual aspects. I'm working on the mental aspects. I'm growing myself so I can be a better version of myself. I'm not trying to be somebody else or meet someone else's standards. I'm meeting my own. So when I look at these before and after pictures, and Google's going to show you everything that you were if you ever put a picture up. And so it's important to make sure that you're setting a standard for yourself, and success for yourself, and what that looks like in your eyes. Because as you're walking and as you're carrying yourself, those things are going to be apparent in your aura and the way you walk and the way you enter a room. You command the room. When you walk in there, people are like, oh, I want to know who that is. Who is that person? Like Madonna used to say, who's that girl? Who is that person? You know? And that's what I choose to do as I walk in my wellness. I'm doing it for myself, and I'm making triumphs, and I'm making advances for myself. That's going to help me to be the better version of me. Okay. But as I spoke about, I want to talk about, you know, preparing for travel. And like I said, I do a lot of traveling for work and for leisure. And I want to talk about how I prepare for those trips. So I've got my notes here for me. So I want to make sure I don't leave out anything. But I want to talk about first preparing for the trip. Okay. Now, typically, when I go on work trips, I travel with a companion. So I have someone who is, a travel companion who comes with me, and that person understands my wellness journey. It's important that people, you know, understand what station you are in your life, because sometimes they may ask you to do things, or they may not be aware that you're trying to make some changes. And so they you know, and they may not do it intentionally, but they're not they may work against what it is that you're trying to do for your wellness journey. So the people who I travel with know that I was on a wellness journey. I am a person who does not eat pork or beef, and that's just been for years. My body just does not digest it well. It's not for religious reasons or anything like that. My body just stopped digesting it. I was the person who, when I tell you, I used to eat the entire pig, chitlins, all the things. I know people were like, "Yeah, did you?" Yes, I did. I can still taste the bacon in my throat, and it's been almost 30 years. Okay. So I had plenty of medium rare steaks and all the things. And it just got to a point where my body was not responding well to it. It just did not digest. It felt like I was eating rocks. And so I had to, do something different. And that's important too, to listen to your body when it's trying to tell you things. Okay. As I have entered menopause and all of the things there, uh, with each year, there are some things that, I just can no longer eat. Last year, I found out I can no longer eat processed meat. Like, I would have meetings and, they would have the little sandwiches and I would go to eat a my stomach said, "No, ma'am." And I have a very low threshold for pain. And so as soon as something gives me a stomach ache or something hurts, I don't ever have to have it again because I can't do pain. So, so I, I listen to my body and my body says there are certain things that I just cannot eat. And so I try, you want to be able to articulate to people, you know, what, some dietary issues you may have. And people are definitely more accepting now, or they're more, there's a level of awareness now in how people are eating. They see that people are gluten free, or they see that people have issues with lactose intolerance and things of that nature, because how we prepare food, how we preserve food is different from the way it was when we were younger. Some of us who are 50 and older, and so, we're just in a space now where things are not processed in the same way that they were back then. So, we have to, take into consideration that whatever is in those things is causing us to have all of these different intolerances, and it's causing dis-ease in our body. And so it's important that, we share those things, not as a means of alienating ourselves, but as a means of self-care. We're advocating for ourselves. I'm not going to intentionally put something in my body that is going to cause harm just to please someone else. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to, stand on my soapbox and say, well, I can't have this, and so nobody else can have it either. We have to find that happy medium. We have to be able to articulate, these are the things I'm going to do. And if they aren't available, what things am I bringing that are going to, allow me to still participate in the activity, you know? And that's where we can go on a whole nother tangent about not focusing on the food and focusing on the fellowship. We have so many things that we do that are surrounded, or by food, or that incorporate food, and that we don't want to miss out on the fellowship and the meaning of a gathering, because the food is either good or not good, or it was there or it wasn't there, or there was a lack of. We don't want that to be the focus. Okay, but I digress. I digress because, again, I want to talk about preparing for the trip. So when I go, whether it's for work or for play, what I like to do is research the destination. Okay. If it's for work and I'm within the 50 states and I'm going to a particular state, let's say, for instance, I'm going to Houston. If I'm going there, and I know I'm going to a particular area, and I have my travel companion with me, and they know some of my dietary restrictions, what they'll do is, and I have some, like I said, I work with some wonderful people. And so what I do is, I'll research the restaurants. I'll look and see what's on the menu. I'll look and see some things that I can have, so that way I'm not going so far out of how I normally eat. But what I can do is I can at least prepare myself for what things are in that area and some options that I may have. And then it also keeps me from having to, if I can look at the menu ahead of time, then I don't have to look at the menu once I'm there at the restaurant and be tempted by all the beautiful pictures of the desserts and the shakes and all these other things that may be in there. I can just focus on the actual meal. And then as you travel with that companion or with that person, whether it's a significant other, whether it's a work companion, then that person gets to know your personality. They get to see how you eat, and they can also partner with you, as opposed to saying, oh, why don't you just have those fries? Or, oh, look at this cake. You want a piece? They begin to respect and honor your wellness journey. And that's something that's important too. You're going to honor it, but it's wonderful when you can have someone who supports you and walks with you, especially if it's a person who you spend a significant amount of time with. And I've been with my company for many, many years. And so now I have a relationship with the people who I travel with. I have a relationship with my husband and with my daughter and my granddaughter. And so they know how I eat, and they honor that. They don't, fight me at every turn, like, oh, why aren't you having this? Why can't you do this? Or why don't you just have a little piece? They honor my decision and my choice to eat a certain way. And that's important for people to understand, that it's something that is serious to you, but not to alienate you, but to partner with you and say, okay, these are some of the options that you have. And so it's nice when I travel for business because, like I said, my coworkers will say, hey, I know we're going into this certain place. And they have, I know you like fish. I'm about 90% pescatarian. They'll say, oh, well, go and have this piece of fish. And or they have really good chicken. You could try that. So they give me options. So you really want to research the area that you're going to. I'm going to Panama this year, and it's going to be the first time I've been there. I've been researching that destination. What is the popular food that they eat there? What is the fare that they eat? What type of food do they eat? What are things cooked with primarily? Are they cooked with pork, or are they cooked with beef or things of that nature? What are some alternatives that I have? And so I've been looking into that. So it's important to research where you're going, so that way you can be prepared and not be caught off guard, and sit there and say, oh, well, I can't eat anything because I didn't realize that everything was going to have a certain thing in it. I'm not a fan of spicy food. So there's certain foods that, I kind of tend to stray away from. But it's nice to have the alternatives. It's nice to have the knowledge, because then you can make informed decisions about what it is that you're going to eat, or if you need to bring a supplement. Because again, you're not trying to, make the people that you're traveling with, or, feel bad, like, oh my gosh, you're just sitting over there and you can't eat, and you're sitting there, well, I can't have anything. Are you bringing snacks? Are you bringing things that can, you can use as a supplement? Is there some type of protein shake or something that you can bring with you that can supplement? Because again, you're not focusing on the food, you're focusing on the fellowship, you're focusing on the time that you're having with that person, and not having it be totally surrounded, or concentrated on the food that you're eating. So, like I said, step one is to make sure that you're researching the area, researching the destination, seeing what the popular foods are for that particular area, and seeing what you can and cannot eat. Okay. Then if you're going international, like I said, if you're going on a personal trip, or even if you're going on a business trip and you're going internationally, make sure that you're checking to see what it is that you can bring. I love sardines. I love, the nuts and things like that. But if you're going international, make sure that it's something that you can bring, that they're not going to confiscate at TSA when you're going through, to check your bags. Make sure that you can bring those things. And then also make sure that you're bringing the things that you need. Just like you bring your personal items, and you bring, your medications and things of that nature. And speaking of medications, making sure that if it's something that needs to be refrigerated, that you have a little bag. They sell them on Amazon. They're little bags that you can have, that you can put a little ice pack in, and make sure that you have those things that you need. Those are important, just as important, your personal and your medication. Do you bring, are there food items that you need to bring? Staples, that things that you normally would eat, here in the States, that you would like to bring with you. Go online and find out if it's something that you are allowed to bring with you. As usually it's fresh fruits and vegetables and things of that nature that you cannot bring with you because of how they preserve food and because of how they treat food. They don't want those things brought in. So it's those packaged foods that you can bring, but it's always good to go back and check. Make sure that you are checking. Okay. Another thing that I do, whether I'm in state, out of state, is I bring exercise equipment with me. I have issues with my spine. I have spinal stenosis, and so I have a wedge that I bring that I lay on that helps with the alignment of my spine. I have small hand weights, 1 pound or 2 pound that I bring with me because though I do a lot of seated exercise, I do a lot of strength training. So no, I'm not bringing 5 pound weights and adding 10 pounds to my to my suitcase, but I'm bringing some equipment that I may be able to use. I may bring stretch bands. Things of that nature that are going to help me, balls that can be blown up and deflated, and things that I can do to supplement, my exercise routine. Or you can use the exercise equipment, of course, if you need something heavier. You can use whatever is at the hotel or place where you're staying. But that's what you're doing. You're packing those things that you need so that way you don't use it as an excuse not to do certain things. We talked about creating healthy habits and habits. I don't get away from my habits just because I'm not home. I take those healthy habits with me. They travel along with me. So just like I pack my toothbrush and I pack my toiletries, I pack my exercise equipment and things that I know that are going to help me to continue along those healthy habits that I've created at home. So if those things are portable in any form or fashion, I make sure that I take them with me. So it's making sure that you're doing the research, that you're making informed decisions, but especially when it comes to your food and if you need to bring snacks, find out if those are things that you can take with you if you're going to be traveling internationally. Okay? The goal is to make sure that you are creating consistency in your routine. Okay? And then once you get there, once you've packed your things and you've made your list and you've gotten all the things that you need to take with you, you want to make sure that you're enjoying your trip. Okay? In preparation for your trip, if you know that you're going someplace and you're going to be doing a lot of walking or you're going to be doing hiking or something that you don't do on a regular basis, it's important that maybe a couple of weeks prior that you start getting on your treadmill or walking in the neighborhood so that way you're not causing your muscles to go to go crazy because you haven't prepared for it. Just like you have people who prepare for marathons and half marathons and full marathons and all of these things, they train for those things. If you're going to be doing activities that are going to require a lot of rigorous, movement or like I said, hiking or walking, make sure that you start doing those things so that your body doesn't feel the pain or the soreness. You don't want to be on your vacation and the second day you're sore because you decided to walk or hike up a mountain and you hadn't done that in years and now your body hurts. You're wanting to go on vacation so that way you can enjoy it, so that you can have fun. So prepare yourself physically for the activities that you're going to be participating in when you get to your destination. Okay? Another thing that you want to remember is that you're going there to relax. And so make sure that you're doing some of the things that you do at home when it's time to relax at the end of the day. And that's something that is important. I made sure that I made a special note about that because I travel a lot and there are time changes. And your circadian rhythm is something that is synced to light, to meals, to activities, to routines. And so when you're traveling, there can be a misalignment that takes place, between your home time and the local time of where you are. And that can affect your ability to sleep. Okay. So one thing that you want to do, and it's something that experts say, it says sync your fork to your flight. Okay. And that means that, in order to keep your circadian rhythm on point, make sure that you're, you know, not eating too much, but eating enough just to satiate yourself till you get to your destination. Then what you want to do is make sure that you're eating on the time frame of the destination that you're going to. Okay, so if there's a 4 hour difference, if there's an 8 hour difference, they're having breakfast, you want to make sure that you're eating on their time schedule so that way your body can get back on the rhythm of where you are for the time that you are there. Okay. Some things that you can do that can assist with that rest or with that peaceful sleep is to pack a sleep mask. So that way you're getting complete darkness, because sometimes the shades or the blinds where you are may let that light in, or there may be night lights, and those things affect your ability to sleep, to get that restorative sleep. Sometimes we close our eyes and we sleep, and we wake up and we're still exhausted because it wasn't restorative sleep. It wasn't sleep that was going to, give us what our body needed. So you want to make sure that, if it's darkness that you need, so that way your body understands that it's dark and this is time for rest. You can bring a sleep mask with you, or you can bring a compact pillow. I am a huge person in bringing my neck pillow. And for some reason, because of how my, issues with my spine, I sleep with my neck pillow. And so, it's something that helps me, to be comfortable. And, for some people, they can get cooling pillows with certain sheets on it. Sometimes the hotel pillows are not comfortable. So you want to have something that you can bring with you that's portable, that is going to give you that comfort that you need, that's going to help with that restorative sleep. Okay, you may want to put in earplugs, because the sights and sounds of where you are, depending on how thin the walls may be, there may be a lot of activity going on, and you need to be able to have those earplugs to give you that space, or that, aura that you need to have that restorative sleep. You know, I am a person who likes frequencies. I like to hear frequencies at night. So sometimes I'll have that playing. Or some people like aromatherapy, that way they can have that smell or that sound, or they have, the sound of water. My husband loves to hear that rain, the sound of rain. And so having those things to help you to have restorative sleep is going to be beautiful, because that's going to make your trip, whether it's business or pleasure, more, it's going to make it more robust, because you're going to be able to, feel rested. You want to go on vacation to relax. And so, your sleep is going to be different, because you're not going to have as much stress as you would if you were just, going to your 9 to 5, going through your normal activities at home. Vacation or time away is supposed to give, it's supposed to be a time to relax. And so you want to keep with those routines. You want to keep with those things that you do. You may want to still continue to journal at night. You may want to make sure that you give yourself a couple of extra hours. Some people, as soon as they land, they want to jump into all of these activities when they're traveling for pleasure. And sometimes you may just need to give your body an opportunity to rest. Give your body an opportunity to, like I said, eat on that schedule, because that's going to help with jet lag and all of those things that cause, the stress of traveling, the irritability, the lack of energy, because you may have had to get up early in the morning to catch your flight, and you're going through all of these things. So make that first day that you're there a day of rest. Just relax, give your body a chance to make the adjustments that it needs to make. And then the next day, you can start talking about excursions and all these other things that you want to do. Because we get excited, and then once the adrenaline is over, after we've done the activity, now we're exhausted, and we can hardly get up in that second day of our trip, because we tried to cram too much into that first day. Give yourself an opportunity to make the transition, so that way the days after that are going to be, more meaningful. You'll be able to do more because you've prepared. Everything is about time management and being able to prepare for the things that you're doing. Just like we prepare for tests, and we prepare for things that are important to us. It's important for us to be able to, effectively vacation. I want to be able to do that. And so it's important to make sure that you're making proper preparations for that. And rest is something that is huge, that was restorative, deep sleep is something that we need. And like I said, having these things like the sleep mask or a pillow or the earplugs, or like I said, those aromas or things, take those things with you so that way it'll just give you that sense of peace. Those things that help you to relax or to calm yourselves at the end of the day are things that you want to bring with you on your trip, so that way, you're preparing yourself or giving yourself an opportunity to launch into those better activities and things that you're doing once you get there. That is something that is key. And I can't say that enough. The time management, taking the time to really uh make sure that you've made the proper preparations is going to make your trip meaningful. Like I said, I'm excited about going to Panama, and I really, really am focused on any of the dietary restrictions that I may have first, making sure that I bring things with me, making sure that I'm checking, always check. We're in an age of information, so you can always go online, you can always call, you can always, you know, uh, seek the questions that you need. What are some of the cuisines that are typical to Panama, and I've looked up those things. And then what are some things that I should look out for, what are some recommendations that they have, so that way you have a little bit of a course of action. I know some people like to just go off the cuff and just go and see what's out there, and I'm one of those people at times as well. I want to go and I want to experience the culture. I don't want to do the same things that I would do here in the States when I'm out internationally. I want to be amongst the people. I want to get to know the culture. I want to get to know the environment and things of that nature. But in order to do that, I want to be able to have a clear mind. So it's when you're making those preparations and you have those things, then you're not causing yourself added stress, because you don't want to get on vacation and then you get over there and then you realize that a food item had something that you didn't realize was in there, and then you spend half of your trip being sick. You want to make sure that you have the things that you need. If you take Pepto Bismol, or you take something that, just in case something is, upsets your stomach. What are the things that you're taking to prepare yourself for wellness? And as I mentioned, it's not just the physical things. Like I said, you can bring your exercise equipment. You can do things like that. You can, pack those types of items, but you also want to have your journal if you are a person who journals, so you can continue to do those things even abroad. You know, I I cross a lot of different time zones, and what I was talking about earlier with regards to your circadian rhythm, and having the space be a certain way, especially if it gets lighter earlier, that can throw you off. It can throw you off for the entire day. Just having those things on, and giving the appearance that it's darker than it is, when you wake up, you're not interrupted by the light or by those sounds that are not typical to, your home environment, you know? So it's taking the wellness with you. That's something that is going to be critical as you're going into these summer months, as you're traveling with your families. But more importantly, like I said earlier, you want to focus on the fun and the fellowship. Sometimes we get so caught up in, oh, well, the food wasn't what I thought it was, so it was a horrible experience. You're gonna forget that you were in another country. You're gonna forget that you were just sitting on the beach, but because the food wasn't what you thought it was, now all of a sudden the trip is ruined. We put so much focus on that and not on the activities and the fun and the fellowship. And that's where, our focus should be. I have an opportunity to travel to Panama with a dear friend of mine. We went to school together. That is my sister girlfriend, and it's just going to be nice to be able to sit and have fun with her and laugh and joke and experience the people. But the focus is not going to be on the food, you know? And just like we talked about food, we want to also make sure that we talk about hydration. A lot of us are going to places where the weather is tropical, and we want to make sure that we're doing things to protect, our bodies, that we're hydrating ourselves. We're hearing about people, passing out and falling because of dehydration. Or they're getting inflamed because they're not drinking enough water. Make sure that you know what the water situation is where you're going. Is it palatable water? Is it something that has to be treated before you can drink that? My husband is Haitian and we have traveled to Haiti and you cannot drink the water there. You can drink bottled water, but they have certain water that's in little plastic little squares and you cannot drink that water. Make sure that you are aware of the things that you can drink as well. And speaking of drinking, think about your alcohol consumption. People they go on vacation and the first thing they're thinking is, margaritas by the pool or, or whatever other kinds of drinks. Make sure that you're limiting that because remember that as you have alcohol in your system, you know, food that you're eating with that takes longer to digest. Or sometimes it doesn't digest until after that alcohol is absorbed into your system. So you want to be careful about the things that you're eating because they may cause you know, the drinks that you're having because they may cause the food to sit in your body longer than it typically would because of the alcohol. So be careful about your alcohol consumption, you know, have one or two, not saying don't have any, but have one or two. Be cognizant of how the alcohol can affect the things that you're eating, or have a lighter fare as you're, having a little bit of those. But restrict it to one or two drinks so that way you can still enjoy yourself. No one wants to be somewhere and not remember the time that they had. You know, sometimes we eat and we just like, oh, I ate so much that now my stomach hurts. Oh, but that it was such good food. We never want it to be where it's something that's going to cause harm or it's going to be something that's going to upset our system. Have a little bit so that way you can still enjoy and still remember all the things that happened. I never want to eat to the point where, like my husband used to say, I ate till my stomach broke. You don't wanna do that. You wanna be able to enjoy your meal, stop when you're full, so that way if you're choosing to walk afterwards, set your activities around, after you eat. You may wanna have something if you know it's a slightly heavier meal, you may wanna say, "Okay, well, let's plan to do a little walk around the area that we're at, so that way we're getting that good walk in, we're getting that air in, we're going and we're sitting out on a balcony if we have an opportunity to get in some of that vitamin D, if we're sitting outside. Make sure that it's meaningful as you're going and that you're not doing anything that's going to harm or that's going to thwart your efforts when it's time to come back home. But the beauty of this wellness journey is that even when things go awry, you always have an opportunity to get back on track. Because we understand that, when you're out there and you're seeing all of the things, sometimes all of these, wonderful tips and tricks go out the window because just like, I just saw that big old beignet or something like that, and I just started eating. It happens. But then we go back to eating the way that we want to. Or if we're going to have something special, then what you can do is, make sure that you're eating properly around that. If you know you're going to have a big piece of cake or you're going to have something that's rich and filled with calories, then drink a decent amount of water during the course of that day. Or make sure that you're having your salads and your vegetables and things of that nature. You're not ruining the entire day. And that's something that I want you to remember. You're not ruining the entire day because you had one thing. Okay, I had that piece of cake. That doesn't mean I have to have that ice cream and then I have to have the shake and all those things afterwards and just cause a snowball effect. I had that cake. It satiated, what that little sugar rush that I needed or that little, thing in me that said, "Oh, I just need that little sweet." Okay. Have it and then go back to your regularly scheduled program. Your wellness follows you wherever you go. So even as we're talking about taking wellness with us, we're preparing for it and we're continuing in it no matter where we go. But what we're doing is we're taking time to to research, we're taking time to pack and make sure that we're bringing the things that we need, in case something should happen, and that we're giving ourselves time to have that restorative rest that vacation is supposed to bring. Because how many times do we go on vacation and we come back exhausted? Why is that? Because sometimes we didn't prepare for the trip, or we may have overdid it. Oh my goodness, I hiked every day and that's something I don't ever do. A couple of weeks before you go on your trip, start adding a little bit more walking so that way, it's that natural progression so that you're not coming back so exhausted or you're staying out and you're having super late nights. There are activities that go on, and sometimes we have to set a little curfew for ourselves. May sound a little, like, what do you mean? Kim, you set a curfew. Have a time where you're giving yourself enough hours to have sleep so that way you're not sleeping the next day, half the next day away, and missing out on opportunities to do other things because you just wanted to hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we're just sitting and then we may be consuming alcohol and it's not, and then we're not getting that restorative sleep that we need. You want to be able to wake up refreshed. You want to be able to wake up and enjoy the time walking around. You don't want to be hungover, sitting there like, where's the coffee at? And because I can't move. That's not fun. Focus on the fun and the fellowship and not so much on the food. That's the same thing even when I travel again for business. I'm not going out and hanging out in the middle of the night because I know that I have work to do. I'll go out and see what the food fair is and see, what's different that I haven't tried that, they may not have in the state that I live in, and I'll go and have that, you know, but I want to make sure that I've gotten that restorative sleep so that I can do the work that I need to do and be able to do it with a clear mind and with efficiency. That way I can finish sooner, then I can go out and partake in some other things. Especially as we're getting older, we have to, you know, not always think with that 20-year-old mindset because don't worry, your body's going to tell you. Just in case you were wondering. Okay? As we're getting older, there are things that we can't do as efficiently or can't do just because our bodies won't allow for it. Not yet. There are a lot of people who are up in age who can still move and hike and run and play and do those things because they've taken the time to to make wellness a habit. They've taken on healthy habits and they carry those with them. And that's allowing them to enjoy their trips, not from a wheelchair, but on their legs. Okay. But as we're moving through, just like a person like myself with spinal stenosis, I'm not letting that stop me from being able to have a quality of life. So there are times I ride a scooter in the airport and other areas because I want to still be able to experience what it is. I don't want there to be things that are causing a barrier. I call this show How Now because it's how can we navigate in the space that we're in the time that we're in the season that we're in. It's important for us to think about those things. What are some things that I can do to increase my quality of life with the situation that I'm in? And what am I doing to make that situation better? We have to advocate for ourselves. Remember that you are advocating for your health and do it while you can do it for yourself because there are some out there who are not able to do it because they may not be sound of mind to be able to make those kind of decisions. But while we have our mind and our faculties about us and opportunities to increase our quality of life, let us be vigilant in asking the questions that we need to ask with regards to our health and our wellness. Speak with your health professional or your health team. and make sure that you're doing things that are going to help you. If you are traveling and you're not sure about things with regards to shots or immunizations or things that you have to take, make sure that you're tapping in with your health professional and finding out those things before you go abroad as well. Because the worst thing that you want to happen is to have a medical emergency while you are out of state. And it may not be covered by your insurance, or you may not have gotten travel insurance or things of that nature, and now you're stuck. Okay, so it's important to take the time to do the research, just like you're researching the trip. Oh, I want to go to Hawaii, or oh, I want to go to Panama, or oh, I want to go, to Rome, wherever it is that you want to go. Make just like you're doing the research for that, make sure that you're doing the research, that you're bringing everything that you need to bring, even down to making sure you have the proper cords for all of this technology that we have, for those who have to take their laptops and their tablets and their phones and things. You don't want to get, you don't want to go internationally and find out that all the plugs are different and you can't plug in any of the things that you have. These are all questions that you need to ask yourself as you're preparing, again, to take wellness with you, because anything can happen and you want to be able to make sure that you can bounce back and that your trip isn't spent, laying in someone's hospital or being sick for the first couple of days because you didn't take the time to prepare for your trip. Make sure, again, and take this from a person who travels a whole lot, make sure that you're leaving enough time, that they say, be to the airport 2 or 3 hours early, be to the airport 2 or 3 hours early. Take your tablet, take a book or something. If you get there and you go through, great. But if you don't, you don't want your trip to start off stressful because you were scrambling to get to the airport or to get through TSA and all of those things. Time management is key. You want to start your trips right. I'm traveling tomorrow. And I want to make sure that, I'm leaving ample time to, walk to my gate, to grab a protein coffee if that's what I want from Starbucks, or anything else that I want to bring, making sure that I'm prepared, so that way I'm going into that space with a sense of calm and not with stress and, oh, I didn't bring this, and oh, we've forgotten, oh, we're rushing, and oh, we're scrambling. That's not how you want to start out a vacation. You want to start out the vacation, in that relaxed mode from the beginning to the end, making sure that you give yourself enough time and don't run into activities that are going to cause you to oversleep and miss your flight going back home. And now you're stressed going back into the stressful situation that you left before you went on the trip. Okay. These are all tips and tricks that I hope are going to help you take wellness with you as we go into these summer months and prepare for travel. So again, if this is your first time being with us here on the How Now podcast, be sure to go to my website, www.hownowpodcast.com, or go to my YouTube channel. They've both been scrolling across the bottom of the screen so that you always know what's happening in the now. Like I said, this is season 6, and we're happy to have you. Make sure that you go and tap in. Again, like, follow, and share. So that way you'll know what's happening in the now. And always make sure you reach out if you just want to talk, learn more about the wellness journey. Make sure that you tap in, go to my website, and schedule a time to come and chat with me and to see how I can help you in your wellness journey as I'm continuing to walk in mine. Okay. And that will do it for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until I see you all the next time, I say peace.